James here. Hope everyone's doing all right. Thanks again for joining me. Go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe if you're excited to join me on my venture on creating a YouTube channel. Again, I plan on creating different venues for myself, but I'm in this basically in this video. We're essentially going over a 1988 video of Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu, in which he was talking to some students. I would like to say they're in high school. So basically, he's trying to analyze the peer pressure we tend to deal with in the academic system in regards to the racial dynamics and the difference between thinking white or thinking black, in the corporate sense, and also understanding that it matters what your peer groups are doing around you in order for you to reach that next level that all of us have ambitions to reach. So yeah, without further ado, I'll get started on the video. Again, thank you guys for joining me, and yeah, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, and we will be getting started now.
The following workshop is presented by National Educational Consultant Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu.
Are you going to accept Mrs. Jones's offer to be in honor classes?
Are you kidding? I can see it right now. All of my friends talking about me and calling me a nerd.
I know the feeling. They still call me stuck up because of the grades I get and the way I talk. That's why I dropped out of honors classes.
I think it's harder on the brothers myself. If you can't fight, play ball, or get high, you're just not with it.
Well, I'm not trying to compare, but sisters are vicious.
Listen, why don't we cut ninth period geometry? You want to go to the park?
Word, let's get out of here right now.
All right, let's go.
I'm a consultant across the country in a program titled Closing the gap between white and black students. The average white European child in our California test is scoring at the 60th percentile. The average black African-American child is scoring at the 30th percentile. Now, we believe there are 5 major reasons for this gap. One reason has to deal with teacher expectations. There are many teachers who lower expectations for black students. Another reason for this gap lies in parental involvement. There are some parents that are not involved and supportive of their children's education. Another reason has to deal with student self-esteem. There are many children that do not feel good about themselves, that do not like the way they look. Another reason for this gap lies in the curriculum. It's not motivating, it's not relevant, and also learning style. Children learn in different ways, and many teachers give left brain lesson plans for large numbers of right brain thinking students. But the major reason, or one of the reasons we want to look at today for this gap, lies in peer pressure. There are 5 major reasons for this gap: teacher expectations, parental involvement, student self-esteem, the curriculum, and peer pressure. And we wanted you to be with us today because we want to look at the impact of peer pressure on academic achievement. What we're getting at is that it's very possible for parents to be doing their job, for teachers to be doing their job, and it all go for naught because the black peer group is more concerned about what kind of gym shoes or sneakers they wear, what kind of clothes they wear, how well they dance, fight, and play basketball. Is there anyone in this audience that has had a negative encounter with peer pressure, a situation where your peer group was not reinforcing academic achievement? Can anyone give some example of how their peer group was not encouraging them to do a good job in school? Anyone?
Okay. I just wanted to jump in there because I think that's a very good question that he asked regarding how your peer group kind of motivates you in regards to pushing you towards academic. So for me, my background, having grandparents that were into academics, my grandma was a teacher and my grandpa, I believe, was a superintendent, well known to really have a deep core in education. So in the cultural norm that I was raised in Nigeria, education was prioritized. We had tutors and we had those dynamics of education. So being able to be convinced that education is not relevant was one of the hardest things that could have been done because education within that society was top notch. So in saying that, there are certain dynamics where the peer groups, as he's getting towards, are not exactly. So from my exposure in the U.S., um, I could see a situation in which academic was not pushed or was not something that basically was prioritized. Basically, that's the word I was thinking. Education was not prioritized. So in seeing those different social groups and understanding that, you know, if you're not in a position where people are pushing you towards school, or just like the small inclination of thinking school is going to be relevant, then nobody's going to hold you accountable for that. So I like where it's taking this conversation, and I'll get back to it now. Again, thank you guys for joining me. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button so we can get more content like this.
Judy?
I have an incident like in our class we have free bells, which is like a study hall. And some people who have study hall will ask other students who drive to school, like instead of studying for a test, to take them somewhere to get something to eat or whatever. And if they say no, then they'll say, well, you're a nerd for staying to study. You don't have to study. I mean, study tomorrow when you get home, or, you know.
And again, the person that had the study hall had the car.
Uh-huh.
And they were trying to get that person to leave study and go get them something to eat. Okay. Anybody else with an example where negative peer pressure did not reinforce academic achievement? Anyone else? An example like that? Where your friends did not encourage you to do a good job in school?
And I actually think that was a very important case she brought up, because in my sports background, playing basketball, I could see a situation, not that it happened to me, but I could see a situation in which they might have study all and the players might not be taking it seriously. So, I mean, in that situation, a kid that might be struggling to stay on the team, being mixed in that circle where it's like the guys are just like, let's go grab lunch, but this is the best time for that kid to get that stuff done. So in that situation, those are the kind of small social circles in which it's not pushing education as much. And when you deter from those paths, it's usually hard to climb back up. But yeah.
Anyone else? With a situation where your peers did not reinforce academic achievement?
I have seen peers that they do, but then they don't. So it's sort of like.
Well, that's good. You have some that do and some that don't.
Some that do and some that don't. But
describe those that don't.
They don't really. It's not that they tell you don't go to school or something like that. But I have people who say, well, why don't you come over my house? And then we'll do so and so and so and so. And I'm like, well, I have to go to class because I have already missed so many days out of class. And it's like, well, you can miss one more day. No, I can't. So I go to school anyway. But and then some, you should really come to class because you're missing out on so much.
Okay, a little later on, we're going to talk about which way do you side, with those that reinforce or those that don't. In my latest book titled, To Be Popular or Smart, we also interview students across the country, those that had good friends and those that had.
Yeah, I'm going to let him continue. I just wanted to stop there because what she essentially just talked about is what I talked about previously, in which when you get to that level where like you're not doing enough and then it's time to actually catch up, it's so much work. It's so much work. So those peer groups tend to make a big difference, because I think when you consider something like the Kobe mentality, right, the Mamba mentality, which is like I wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning, right, when the average person is waking up at 8, 9 to get ready for practice at like 11, right? I've done so much work within the span of 5 a.m. in the morning to 10 a.m. when people are waking up to get ready for practice, that by the time I get to practice, I get to double up on the work I've done. Right, that's giving yourself a very early start. But to bring it back to this situation, when you're in a situation where you're so far behind and you're trying to climb back up, imagine how much of that work could have been done to the stage where you put yourself ahead. Now you're actually trying to climb back up. And that's always harder. That's always harder. So I like how she pointed that out, because it's like you miss so many days of school, right? You have these peer groups that are telling you, oh, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. While there's another one telling you, hey, there's a lot of work you got to do to catch up. So you better start coming. So I definitely respect that. And I can see how that plays a big role.
Had band friends. And I just want to share with you an excerpt. One of the brothers named Lamont, who was one of the ones influenced by the negative peer group. This is what Lamont had to say. I can get an A on any test I want. It doesn't matter whether it's biology, algebra, English, history, drafting, or gym. In some of my classes, there have been 5 tests, and I've gotten 5 different grades. I've gotten A, B, C, D, and F. It's hard being serious the entire year. I got too many distractions to be in honors classes, but I don't want my partners to tease me and call me a fag. I usually sit in the back of the class and clown, and sometimes I don't go to class at all. I'm tight with my friends, and the women love me. I don't see the guys respecting the nerds or the women chasing after them. I would like to get A's or B's. It would really get my parents off my back, but I can't be serious for 40 straight weeks. Plus, I'd rather be down with my partners. Has anybody experienced something like that, where you've got an A, a B, a C, a D, and an F? In other words, you can turn it on when you want to turn it on. You can turn it off when you want to turn it off. But many of us have a real difficult time being serious the entire year, and we have to work on that. I want to look at some questions. I want to ask this group, how do you act white? See, there's a rumor going around Cincinnati. There's a rumor going around that when black youth are doing a good job in school, they get teased. When the brothers are doing a good job in school, they're called a chump or a nerd or a fag. And I've even heard in some cases that when black youth are doing a good job in school, you're acting white. Now that's deep. If being smart is acting white, what does being black mean? I now want to first of all ask this group, how do you act white? And then we'll go into how do you act black? How do you act white?
Well, from my experience, a lot of
I think that's a great question. And simply put, act white is to understand the corporate dynamic, right? Because in the corporate world, professionalism is what being white looks like. And when you consider other races, like the Asian community, when it comes to business, they have mannerisms that might come across as white, but nonetheless, that's just a corporate image being put up because that's how you have that equal playing field. So to say they're acting white, I think when it's connected with the historical base in which, you know, the corporate image has been white for so long with limited black faces in the corporations, it's easy to just identify being professional as white, speaking professionally, carrying yourself professionally, being in professional settings. And the small quantity of the black dynamic in that is essentially what creates that illusion of being white is what differentiates you in that situation rather than just being exposed to corporate. The corporate world demands that you're professional, demands that you carry yourself a certain way. That's what being white really is. And I guess I absolutely could tie it back to the historical base of the different treatments that have happened from the north to the south. So in saying that, you can understand where the confusion is. And in a place like Chicago, which we know is highly segregated, I've been to Chicago a couple of times, so many times actually. So in saying that, you could clearly see the difference between how the black community could see corporate as just white, right? Because the idea is not to label white as white because you're professional and you have manners. It's to label the corporate dynamic, right? Once we could identify that as what makes them look white, then we could see other communities acting the same way in what we could call technically white, but nonetheless, it's just people being professional.
people that I've talked to say that, you know, I may act white or whatever because of the way that I speak, because I don't use a lot of slang a lot of times unless I'm just joking around. And when I want to get something done or be assertive or serious, I speak, you know, proper English. Or it might be the way that you act or the way that you carry yourself.
So when you speak proper English, they say you're acting white? Okay, and what else are you saying? You're saying when you act a certain kind of way? How do you act a certain way that causes people to call you acting white?
If you're not like using slang or, you know, walking a certain way or doing certain things that the stereotypical black person would do, then you're acting white.
Okay, and remember, if we know what acting white is, we have to also know what acting black is. How do you act black? If acting white is speaking proper English and walking a certain kind of way, how do you act black? Does anyone know how to act black? Okay, anything else? Have you heard that comment that to be smart is to act white? Okay, so when you act black, what does that mean? I mean, if acting smart is acting white, then how does that relate to grades for acting black? Is that right?
I guess, yeah. That's what it's saying. If you're smart, you must be white. If you're black, then you must be dumb. Because white people say we don't know anything anyway.
Okay. And what is a nerd? Does anybody know what a nerd is? I understand that we don't want to be called a nerd. I mean, that's the worst thing to ever be called. What is a nerd?
Their books, who's always worried about getting their
Like,
grades and getting A's and has a less social life.
I like this question because when you really identify what a nerd is, think of it as this. Nerds are people that can use their imagination to create the reality they want to live in. What do nerds usually have in common? You could catch them watching cartoons. What's the basis of cartoons? The basis of cartoons is to create a reality in which kids can do whatever they want to be able to do. You could Jimmy Neutron, right? Building rockets, going out of space, working with aliens, diverse group of friends, right? Things like that are some of the things that kind of spark those thinking thoughts in everybody. So in saying that, nerds utilize their environments to differentiate themselves from everyone else. That's what makes them unique. That's really what a nerd is. Whether you could take books seriously enough to actually create something out of it, or you could go outside the book dynamic and actually create something and then come back and use books to support it. But nonetheless, the idea of a nerd to me, as I am one too, is using your imagination to foresee a future most people didn't think about. So, yeah.
Now, would acting like a nerd make you popular with your students, with your friends?
Your other nerdy friends, but
Oh,
not,
you're the nerdy friends, right? Okay.
not the in crowd, not the people who are popular and are worried about how their hair looks or what's happening at the football game. You could
The
be
in crowd is into what? The hair, how your hair
more
looks?
social life, and the nerdy people are more into their books and trying to achieve something for themselves.
And in most schools, are there more nerds or more people in the in crowd?
More people in the in crowd.
In the in crowd. Okay, and we need to work on that. I want to now ask, which group, or in terms of Asians, why do Asian Americans do a very good job in school? Why do Asian Americans do a very good job in school? Okay, so they study more.
I think this is a very good question because there's a dynamic of if we look strictly at what they're doing to be successful, we could say yes, they study a lot. They have a education supported background where they prioritize education. Similarly, with most Africans, right? Education is up there within most family dynamic with Africans also. But one thing I would say in regards to why the Asian community is successful compared to the African American community, right? Asian and I guess you could say Asian and Africans are successful in academic. It's because we don't deal with the same cultural norms within America. Because when we consider the historical base of America and the inception of it, there's a lot of bloodshed, a lot of division, a lot of things that was simply just not practical in order to get to a certain level of prioritizing education. So in saying that, we all could all look back and make sense of like the reality before we start picking and choosing why we think we're better, right? The Asian community simply doesn't have the same historical base, but they do have a very good education and a family group and dynamic in which helps them be successful, similarly with the African community.
Or to reinforce your point, Kevin, on the SAT, the average Asian on the SAT is scoring 920, and the average white European student is scoring 908, and the average black African American student is only scoring 700. Now, you gave one reason for this gap, and that is the average Asian studies 12 hours a week. The average white student studies 8 hours a week, and we only study 5 hours a week and watch more TV than anybody else in America. Any other reasons why Asians do a very good job in school?
Parents kind of emphasize schoolwork a lot.
Okay, so their parents reinforce academic achievement. And you think that sometimes their parents may reinforce achieving more than African-American parents? Okay, don't worry. I know that's not the case with your parents. But let's go on to the second part of the question. Why do African-Americans do such a good job in sports? In the NBA, 86% of the NBA basketball starters are Black, except in Boston. But only 1% of the engineers and doctors in this country are Black. Why is it that Black students, Black people, do a better job in sports and music than they do in other areas? Is it ability? What is it?
I think that's a very good question also. I think similarly to when I said we have to tie everything back to the past, this is essentially where it comes back into play, right? When the division of academia was separated, right? Because America had a segregated dynamic. They needed for the Black community to be able to have that access, right? There was an episode of My Wife and Kids where the dad was telling the son, "You have to understand, some of these kids are getting busted to come play here, right? Because they were living in the suburbs at that point." So in saying that, the athletics was one of the easiest justification to be able to say you could come within our community to exist, right? So in saying that, that has kind of like been kind of like one of those things, variables you could look at as we go on in life as to why certain things are the way they are. Because in saying that part of it, the academic and the thinkers were kind of like, it's not that there's no situations where if you're smart enough, you would be welcome into certain communities, but nonetheless, it's just not prioritized, to say the least. It's not the first thing people are looking at. Oh, is he actually smart? No, let's get what we could actually get attention for, which is not necessarily thinking, but sports. So that's why we tend to have that the high focus on sports.
They concentrate more on sports and like just saying like in school, since they were young, their peer pressure influenced them to, go with the in crowd and sports and dance. So therefore they emphasize that more. So now when they get older, they still emphasize that.
Okay, so you're saying the Black in crowd is reinforcing the sports and music, and the Asian in crowd is reinforcing study? Okay. Yeah, Charlotte?
You spoke of expectations. If someone expects that you are naturally inclined in this area, that's sort of where you get groomed.
Okay.
And if someone naturally expects that you are not academically sound, then you will be groomed away from that.
So you're saying when adults see our students in the school and they see an Asian student, they automatically assume this person may be well-versed academically? And when they see a Black student, this person may be well-versed in sports and music? Okay, so we have to work on the issue of expectations. And that's a serious issue that we have to look at. We want to also look at some characteristics of lower achievers and higher achievers. And I just want to find out, do some of these things apply to you? We want to look at the underachievers, those students that were not doing well in school. And these are some of the things that they did. And I want to find out, do you do some of those things? The underachievers, remember, these students are very smart. They just don't want to do well. They're very smart. They just do not want to do well. Some of them cut class. I'll make it even easier. We won't say you. Do you know any of your friends who are pretty good in school in terms of ability, but sometimes cut class? Do you know anyone like that? Okay. We also notice that some of them don't even attend class at all. I mean, they miss school altogether. I mean, they left home. Their parents think they went to school, but they never showed up for division. Anyone you know that's acted like that? What about sitting in the back of the class? You know, your friends that sit in the back of the class? I'm gonna make this more at home. Do any of us sit in the back of the class? Okay. We've also noticed that some of the underachievers don't ask questions, that it's not cool to ask questions. Do you know anyone that sits in the back of the class and doesn't ask questions? Do you ask questions? Or do you sit in the back of the class? Which one do you do? You do? In the front of the class or the back of the class? In the middle. Okay, you're in the middle. Okay. We've also noticed that some of the underachievers, they take easy courses. In schools where you only have to take maybe 1 hour class in math or 2 in science, once they get finished with that, they don't take any more. They do not take trig, they do not take calculus or college algebra. Do you know anyone who takes easy courses in high school? Do you all take easy courses in high school? You all taking all the courses? all the way 4 years of math, 4 years of science. Okay, let's go on. This group also doesn't believe in studying. Okay, they're afraid their peer group is going to call them a nerd. Do you know anyone like that? That also wants to avoid studying? And then lastly, this group does not want to be called a nerd, a brainiac, an Oreo. What's an Oreo? What is an Oreo?
A person who's black on the outside, but is white on the inside.
Black on the outside, but white on the inside. Now, elaborate. I mean, how do you do that?
You're black, you know, you're black, but on the inside, you perceive yourself as being white. You do your work, and you hang around a lot of white people, and you act white.
Okay, and remember, this group surely would not want to be called an Oreo. And last but not least, this group does not speak standard English. They would never go to a museum, and they always listen to black music. They don't listen to classical music or anything else. They have to listen to a certain kind of music. Now, that's the underachievers. But we also have some higher achievers. Is there anyone in this audience who's a higher achiever? Higher achiever. They can tell their peer group no. If you can tell your peer group no, raise your hands. Okay, now we will find out right now if you fit into the higher achiever category. Now, this group, though, also wants to be part of the in crowd. In other words, they decided, I'm going to find a way to be smart and still be part of the in crowd. Some of the things they've done is become an athlete. William, as you well know, you can still be a down brother if you can also play basketball. So you're okay if you're on the honor roll. If you also, you can okay in terms of playing basketball if you're also on the honor roll. So you can do both. Or the class clown. Does anyone in the audience know how to be the class clown? You get A's in school, but you tell good jokes. And because you tell good jokes, then you're part of the crowd. Is there anyone in this audience who knows how to be the crowd?
Funny enough, I can see the dynamic in which I think he's given like 3 layers of like the personalities, the traits. The one being the underachiever, the midpoint, and then the high class, or the tryhards, I call them, right? So for the underachievers, the logic it was essentially pushing in regards to those that don't show up and don't do that aspect of things, don't sit in the back of the class, just not really engaged. I could see a situation in which they just don't have that home base for academic where it was prioritized. But as he gets to the middle stage, right, I could see a situation where I kind of see myself falling in between it when I was in school. But then the background I had was able to help me kind of push through, because it gets to, because I played basketball and I was with the athletes most of the time. And for me, it wasn't that was a way for me to supplement the academics, right? Because if I just had school, then I feel like I was limited. But mixing that with sports, or the idea of being a class clown, I don't know about all that. But as long as you can still get the job done, I'm willing to see where it's going with this for now. But yeah, that's just my take on what he said so far in regards to the underachievers, which you can see how the home base never supported because there was no one holding them accountable. But then I can see the next stage, which is, oh, you're playing sports. Now there's something entertaining about you.
Class clown. Yeah. Okay, you all tell good jokes? Good jokes, okay. Another one is they're never caught studying in public. They get good grades, but no one never sees them studying. Anybody fall into that category? Well, you study, you fall in that category? So you get good grades, but no one knows how you got them, right? So you study by yourself. Or another one is they're very independent. How many of you are independent? You're strong, you feel good about yourselves, you're independent, very good. Also, some people that have done well in this situation are good fighters. In other words, they're able to tell their peer group, if you don't like what I'm doing, we can go down. Now, your first name, the green is? Right here, you're right. Yeah. Your first name? Ruben. Now, have you noticed that if you can fight, you can also be accepted by your peer group? Because many brothers don't respect how well you can do academically, but they do respect how well you can fight. Is that right? Okay. Some other ones that we heard were the better students, they also tutor the bullies. In other words, you can be accepted by your peer group if you tutor the bullies. And then the last one that we saw was they act raceless. Like you just mentioned about acting like an Oreo. They are black, they are white. They try to walk a fine line in the middle. And it's real hard to look black and then act white, quote unquote. So your black friends don't like you and your white friends don't like you. That's called being raceless. And that's real hard, where your black friends don't like you and your white friends don't like you. And you end up raceless. I know what you're going through. I'm also in this book as well. I was a ninth grader in high school, and I was in honors classes. And my friends teased me so much, I flunked the whole marking period intentionally, trying to get kicked out of school or out of honors classes. Had it not been for my father then kicked my butt, I'd had some real serious problems. But the compromise was I got a chance to run track and be involved in martial arts. My friends like that, running track and being involved in martial arts. But it's real tough dealing with the peer group, and we have to work on that. But what I want to now do is to look at.
I agree with that. I agree with that 100% because when you consider as a freshman in high school, for me, being a freshman was me relocating from Houston to Beaumont, which was a new setting for me. I was barely adjusting and getting comfortable in A Leaf. And then having to move to Beaumont was completely new. So the peer group absolutely found basketball as a relief for me to not focus so much on school, right? I never felt the need to that I was bullied for being smart because for some reason people just never maybe a little bit in sixth, seventh grade, but going into middle school and high school, I never felt like my education was something that people. Obviously, people knew I was smart and I could hold my own in the conversation, but nonetheless, it was just nobody competed with me because I didn't make it a competition, right? I wasn't Mr. I know everything and you don't know anything, or I could dominate you in the conversation. I was more like the laid back person where it was just more like, if I know something, I will let you know. And if you want to know too, then cool. If not, then cool. But I think the dynamic of me playing basketball, I never took any honors classes. I personally don't believe in them because all it does is big head most of these kids, and really all they have is more exposure than you do in most of the situations. So it doesn't make them smarter, it just makes them more exposed. So I never saw AP or advanced placement as like a thing to go to. But nonetheless, I could see how basketball is able to help me kind of network differently and not be so much academia with people because at the end of the day there was that gap between certain people and my exposure from home base. And as he just said it, his home base is essentially what backed them up into actually taking academics seriously. So I can see that.
Black excellence. You see, I was real concerned about if you thought that being white was being smart, then that means that being black is being what? Okay, and I won't even put dumb on the board. That's embarrassing. But I have a real concern with if being white is being smart, then what does being black mean? You see, before 1954, we didn't act this way. Being black meant being the best. And we need to redefine again what it means to be black. See, I'm from the old school. See, I was taught that Hippocrates was not the first doctor, that the first doctor's name was Imhotep. What I'm getting at is, whether we're talking about science, in every area that we've been allowed to participate in, we've always been the best. All we've ever needed was the opportunity. So in science, was Imhotep, or Granville Woods, or Lewis Latimer, or George Washington Carver, or Walter Massey, or Sister Jemison, our first black female astronaut, you name the area. All we've ever needed was the opportunity. We're talking about black excellence, because it used to be being black meant being the best. If it's in business, we have strong men and women there as well. Reginald Lewis, who now owns a large company that he just acquired, or John Johnson at Ebony Magazine, or Ed Gardner at Soft Sheen. All we've ever needed was the opportunity. In writing, can you all name me a very good writer? Rather than me just giving you all the names. Can you name me a black writer that you think is very, very good? Yes. Nikki Giovanni, any others?
Richard Wright.
Richard Wright, Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, Gwendolyn Brooks, Alex Haley. In education, Carter G. Woodson, Benjamin Mays, and Mary Petrell, the current president of education. Strong black men and women. In television, who has the best show on television right now? Bill Cosby. And the best newscaster in terms of the talk shows, there's two. Actually, they're both in the morning. Who are they? Morning talk show hosts. Brian Gumble, who's the other one? The female. And Oprah Winfrey. You name the area, we've been good at it. What about in the movies? Who has the greatest box office attraction in the movies? Eddie Murphy. And then you add on people beside Eddie Murphy, Cicely Tyson, and Jones, and Lou Gossett. You name the area, we've been good at it. Let's move to music. Name some top stars in music. Michael Jackson, who else? Anita Baker, Luther Vandross, Stevie Wonder, Aretha Franklin. What about sports? Who's the best basketball player? Michael Jordan. Who has rushed for more yards in football in the history of the sport? Rushed for more yards. Just retired from Chicago. Oh, Walter Payton. Okay. And who hit more home runs than anybody in baseball, including more than Babe Ruth? Initials H.A. Hank Aaron. Okay. So again, you name the area, we've been good at it. Nor are we lazy. Think about it. The rumor is we're lazy. If we're lazy, why'd they bring us to work America? If we were lazy, they could have kept using their servants. We are the world's greatest workers. We're not lazy. In addition to that, we raise their children. We're good at nurturing as well. Also, who received the Nobel Peace Prize? And he lives in South Africa, Zambia right now. Matter of fact, one is living, one died. The Nobel Peace Prize. One lived in America, one lived in South Africa. One is dead, one is alive. Nobel Peace Prize. The one in America was Martin Luther King. And who's the other one? He lives in South Africa right now. Bishop Tutu. Okay. So again, and also, who received more votes with less money? He didn't win, but he had the best run campaign, Jesse Jackson. What I'm getting at is, whatever the area is, science, business, writing, music, TV, movies, you name the area, all we've ever needed was the opportunity. All we've ever needed.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Even in my academic journey, one of the things that I wasn't very familiar with, but I kept an eye on, was the fundamental dynamic of just lights, traffic lights. Like, that was invented by a black man. Let's see. Let me see if I can think of his name. Traffic lights. Yeah, Garrett Morgan. So, like, just say, like, there's certain things that I was just thinking about myself, like, while I was going through the process of academia and through becoming a mechanical engineer. One of the things that I noticed was, like there's been a lot of major contributions. There's someone else I just can't think of right now that made a contribution within the mechanical engineering. I think it was something with the circuit board also, like the lighting that helped Thomas Edison, or something within the gear system. Like, there's been black influences here and there within sciences that are, like, I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like, you could read a whole multiple article pages on simply just black contribution in sciences from my dynamic. So yeah, but then that's that inner work everybody has to do in regards to finding your purpose here and seeing, like, are you moving along the path of the people that came before you? Because at the end of the day, there's a path there. It's just a matter of where you're exposed to it. So yeah. Again, thank you guys for joining me. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying it. Hit that like button. Thank you guys again, and let's get back to it.
Needed was the opportunity. What I want you to understand is, to be black means to be the best. When you go to your schools with white and Asian students, you represent the race. You represent Imhotep. You represent Marcus Garvey. You represent King Akhenaten. You represent Nikki Giovanni. You represent Bill Cosby. To be black means to be the best. And we have to work on this. We have to work on redefining what it means to be black. But because many of us have this kind of definition, now we have to find ways to deprogram it. We deprogram our students right now. See, on a plantation, Abraham Lincoln figured out you have 300 slaves, you have one master. That's a lot of work to watch that many slaves. Why don't you let them go? But don't teach them who they are. Don't give them their story. Notice the word his story. That's all history is. Don't give them their story. Don't make them feel good about themselves. Then you won't have to watch it. They will even say in 1988, 89, 90, 91, they will even say to be white is to be smart. To be black is to be what? To be dumb. That's what will happen when you brainwash students. So we have to work on this. And so since this happened between 1619 and 1865, what we're going to do in about 5 minutes, we're going to find ways to deprogram our students. We want to deprogram about 200 years of brainwashing. But remember, the first step is you need to know who you are. You are an African-American people. Your history did not begin in 1619. It began 4 million years ago. And when you start talking about good hair and pretty eyes, your hair is good hair and your eyes are pretty eyes. You are beautiful just the way you are. But let's go on in this deprogramming process. There are only 4 ways to attribute your success and or your failure. When you do well in school or when you do poorly in school, there are only 4 ways to attribute it. You can attribute it to your ability. You can attribute it to effort. You can attribute it to luck. And you can attribute it to the nature of the task. It was either easy or hard. Now, understand, students, where we're going.
Now, one of the things that I actually want to point out that I really, really agree with that most people take for granted, right? It's the idea of luck in academics. Like, luck does play a role, right? Because at the end of the day, one of the things you see in colleges is like, there's moments where you focus so much on a subject or a specific topic in a test that's to come up, and all of a sudden it's not even relevant to the real test itself, but it's within everything that was taught. So in saying that, you focusing on that opposed to you focusing on something else and that's where, like, okay, I'll take it away from there, because at the end of the day, what could supplement the ideology I was just using in regards to you studying for something and not knowing that it's not going to be part of it is the luck of the relationships you make, which I think is always important. If you can make the right relationships within college, you could then understand where the structure lies and what they're teaching. And the luck, you falling out of luck in that situation is you just not having the network to be able to understand that wasting 50 minutes on this subject is only going to help you fail, opposed to knowing that they're not going to test on this that hard, opposed to that other subject. Now you could place your energy. And this happens a lot in chemistry, because chemistry is such a broad subject in which you could just pick and choose how you could pretty much mess with the kids. So that's where that luck, I just think that luck is very important.
Anything you do in life, your success or your failure, you will attribute it to either one of these areas, to your ability, to effort, to luck, or the nature of the task. For example, if you think you're good in math, if you got 100 on a math test, you would probably say, I'm good in math, and that's why I got 100. And if you got a 40 on the math test, you would probably say, I didn't study hard enough. You would never question your ability because you believe you're good in math. So if you got 100, you attribute it to your ability. If you got a 40, you probably say, I didn't work hard enough, which means the next time you take a test, you will study harder. But if you feel I'm not good in math, I'm not good in science, if you got 100 on a test, you would probably say it was luck. Or you would say it was easy. And if you got a 40 on the math test, you would probably say, well, I never was good in math. What happens is when you do not feel good about yourself, you won't work harder the next time because you attribute the bad grade to your ability. I want you to ask yourself in all your subjects, do you attribute your success to the ability, or do you attribute it to luck and how easy the test was? I want you to attribute your success to your ability. And if you do a bad job, if you did not do well on a particular test, attribute it to effort. My sister tried 4 times to pass the CPA exam, and she did not pass. But she never questioned her ability. She always believed she didn't try hard enough. It's a real good feeling when you never give up on yourself, when you always believe in yourself. You see, many of us are afraid to try. We give up because we doubt our ability. It's called a psychology of performance. And I want you from this point on to work on attributing your success to your ability and your failure to effort. I want you to always stay at level 1 and 2. When you're not doing a good job, you always drop down to 3 and 4. Well, I did good on the test because there was luck, or the test was easy. I wish we had time to go around the room and ask you, where do you attribute your success? Where do you attribute your failure? Your success, the ability. Your failure, the effort. Never question your ability. Always believe you didn't work hard enough.
That's actually very interesting because that's not the dynamic I was thinking of, right? When it considers, from this analogy, basically saying the first two should matter more than anything. Have that faith in yourself in regards to trying to get that success that you're trying to get to. And now, if you don't, never doubt yourself. But if you feel like you weren't able to, you could blame the fact that you didn't put in enough effort, right? Which is to say that your ability is up to par. You're the person you're supposed to be. You just didn't put in enough effort, right? Because the first one is ability, second one is effort, third is luck, and the fourth is task. And when you consider what I was saying initially, which is that so in what I was saying, there was the ability that was already solidified in regards to you could do it. Then you go to the next dynamic and you're like, okay, but I'm putting in the effort. I'm putting in that 50% effort into this task, yet I'm not getting the result I'm wanting. So that's where I'm saying you have to also contribute luck, which it's very important, as I said, because it ties back to that social group that if you're not exposed to, you won't know, right? You won't know what the logic of the psychology of the professor is in regards to. I mean, of course, we have things out now that help a lot regarding Chegg. You have Rate My Professor. You have all these other things out there. Obviously, you have to invest in some of them, but nonetheless, those things help you narrow your thinking a little bit better, opposed to not having the exposure. And that's where that luck comes into play. Because when you're used to doing things where you think, oh, I just need to be clean cut, I just need to, this is what straight. No, there's so many gray areas in which you could actually collaborate and understand different ways that people think, right? So that's where that luck, and then the task comes into play. If the luck isn't there, like in that, the task is just what you have to analyze and ask yourself: is this something you could actually accomplish? Did you fail because the task was just hard? That's like the last part you look into, which I completely agree with. I think that the way it breaks it down is pretty on point.
Another model we want to give to you is called the box. Those things that are for you and those things that are not for you. See, to be part of the in crowd, a lot of times they put you in boxes. When I went to Illinois State, my friends told me that debate was not for me. They told me that running track was for me. See, I had a track scholarship, and it was blind. I was part of the in crowd to run track. My friends liked that. But when I chose to debate, they said that was not for me. The blind students don't do that. I want to now ask this group some questions with regards to what things are for them and what things are not for them. Being a freshman at a black college, is that for you or not for you? Do you envision that, going to a black college? Could that be for you or not for you? What about playing rap music?
I think for me, one of the things for me was I wasn't really exposed to the black dynamic growing up. So for me, the switch up for going from knowing that there was a HBCU to now, like when I went to the PWRs, and I was just like, I'm just trying to get the best type of education I got there. And my argument to the HBCU is simply this: within the dynamic of how America was created, I could argue that most of the tax that African Americans were paying in the past went to the PWIs. Hence, you guys already paid for it. So I see why there shouldn't be like a way of pulling both resources together. So that's just my argument. I might be wrong, but nonetheless, that's something I do want someone to critique me on.
What about being editor of the yearbook? The winner of a spelling contest? Gangbang.
For you.
You said for you. Okay, you nod. I mean, be honest. Be honest on television. Score 21 or better on ACT. Kind of weak on that. Is that for you or not for you? I mean, do you envision that you could score 21 or 23 on the ACT? See, in order to do anything, you have to see it first. You have to see it before you can be it. Or what about 1200 on the SAT? Is that for you or not for you? What about getting high? Sure, we got a dead audience today. All the nerds are here today. What about being a member of the National Honor Society? Judy? You sure? What about playing basketball? What about getting pregnant? You sure now, aren't you? Not for you? At least not right now, right? What about a D grade point average? You sure? What about driving a taxi when you're 25 years of age? You sure? What about working at McDonald's at 25 years of age? Being an engineer?
Yeah.
For you? Okay. What about selling drugs?
That's crazy. Because the plans they had at 25, 28, I mean, they're like, I want to say probably like, what, 15, 16? It'll be crazy to see where they're at now in life and how everything played out for them. But I mean, the ambition and the zeal they had to project themselves in a different dynamic is, I guess you could contribute that to their ability dynamics, meaning they see it in themselves. So I would think they're doing great right now. But that's
Hey, big money selling drugs. You sure that's not for you? What about being a teacher? For you? I like the way your eyes sparkle. We need more teachers. We're losing a lot of good black teachers. On welfare. You sure?
Yeah.
Owning your own business.
For you.
Okay, very good group. We have to work on this because what we've noticed is many of the peer group, they want to put you in boxes. Those things that are for you, those things that are not for you. Can you imagine if I had listened to my friends back in 1970 and chosen not to debate, I wouldn't be here today. My public career as a speaker probably began when I became a debater. But my friends said, that's acting white. They thought that running track was acting black. They thought that debating was acting white. We have to really work on this. Those things that are for you, those things that are not for you. And you know what's interesting? There's this theory called a crab theory. A theory that says many of us try to pull somebody down. See, there's only two ways to be somebody. Either uplift yourself, which requires work, or tear somebody else down, which requires talk. What's interesting is the in crowd, they don't pull down the athlete, but they pull down the scholar. See, if they were jealous, they should also be jealous of the athlete too. But maybe the real issue is because they believe that black people can do this. That's okay. But when someone like you all do a good job in academics, shows they too could do a good job. And they don't want anyone to know that black folks can also do well academically. So they pull this group down. If the cram theory was legitimate, both groups should be pulled down. But most peer groups pull down the scholar, not the athlete. They praise the athlete. They don't praise the scholar. We have to work on that. But let's spread this around. Beyond the issue of students and the issue of deprogramming,
I agree with that 100%. I agree with that because when we consider how we grew up, right? Considering if you're viewing this, we went to school with me, especially in a place like Beaumont. There was a high dynamic of athletics that was pushed. Same with Taylor, to be honest. There was the high push for athletics, right? But I'm sure you could kind of see that for most of the schools around and most of the colleges. And it's just practical, right? And one of the things that I think if I kind of heard him correctly, is simply saying that because they're going up, like sports, athletics and academics, the tussle for the one to be supported is essentially what's creating that friction, where both could be kind of prioritized in a manner where it's like a Venn diagram rather than just this big separation where the scholars are being the academic thinkers are being minimized, and then you have the athletes that are overcompensating. But I would say this was in 1988. When we consider the progress that has been made in society to this stage that we live in now, we could kind of see some of the athletes or at least the younger ones, right? They're thinkers. Well, no, we could even give credit to LeBron James, right? We could give credit to Carmelo, CP3, and Dwayne Wade within the core they created coming in, right? LeBron, for one, creating a family structure that everybody could replicate, right? Obviously, there's probably not the perfect identity of someone to follow, but if we want to say something about LeBron, is that he kept that image positive. And also in the Looney Tunes show that he just made, movie that he made, I like how they incorporated tech into it, which is to say that he's exposed to the thinking aspect that has to go on in the community also. So in saying that, there's been progress, and most of these things, people like Mr. Jawanza, they are visionaries. They say things that are meant to come to pass based on the structure and patterns they've been exposed to. So it's very interesting to hear people like this speak and see how most of their thoughts are being projected in the nowadays society in regards to the different way of the more the how the athletes are actually now thinkers. How both have kind of blended well. And I think LeBron is a great example of that. Obviously, there's more people that have done things in regards to being athletes and mixing it with tech or mixing it with some type of thinking dynamic. So I see the vision that he was planting and how the train of thought for people, elders in the 1988 were thinking. So it's pretty cool to hear this and see what's happening now.
I want to also move to the parents. We want to look at some ideas from the parents as well, because many parents also have children that may be affected by peer pressure. First of all, I believe that good parents know who their children's friends are. Secondly, good parents invite their children's friends over to get to know them better. And many times they program their child's peer group to make sure they run with the right group. My parents made so sure I didn't run into a gang in Chicago. They enrolled me on a track team. I had to run cross country, indoor track, outdoor track. Had me running around a track rather than running around a street. First of all, good parents know who their children's friends are. They invite them over to get to know them better. And third, they program their child's peer group. Are there any parents in the audience that want to share some experiences they've had where their children have also had some encounters with peer pressure? Any comments from the parents?
I've had some experiences where the children have had negative peer pressure, but it's been sort of difficult. Sometimes I always like to use Bill Cosby's TV show as examples of some things that parents can do. Because if you step in too far and too hard, then your children will certainly go in the direction of that negative peer pressure. So you sort of have to just sit back, be aware of it, and watch it and see if it really is dangerous or not. Sometimes we perceive it as being dangerous when it really isn't.
Okay, so you're recommending parents need to be sensitive and stay close.
Stay close.
Okay, and keep the lines of communication open.
If possible.
Okay, yes, Charlotte?
Who the friends are, but to know the parents of those friends so that
Oh,
you're
that's
all
excellent.
communicating.
So you're saying not only know who your children's friends are, but also know their parents. That's very good.
I personally feel like when I send him to you, you have the same values that I have.
Okay.
And so we know we are reinforcing one another when your child comes to me or my child comes to you.
Now, young people, how would you feel if your mother, you said you wanted to go over someone's house, and your mother said, well, let me call, his or her parents and talk to them. How do you feel about that? Oh, mama, why you got to do all this? How do you all feel about that when the parents want your friends' phone numbers to talk to their parents to see if everything's on the up and up? How do you feel about that? Yes.
I think that your parents should trust you and trust that you will not go out and find bad kids. I guess you call them bad kids, because I personally hate it for my mother to do that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Charlotte, what do you think about that? We have a young person here that says she thinks it's unnecessary. You should trust me.
Yeah, so regarding that dynamic of parenting and keeping your kids around a certain group of people that are going the same way you want to raise your kids, I think that's very important. So initially, when I brought up the part of how I grew up and how like the social dynamic for us was more education focused, now tying it back to this situation, that was the whole community that I was around that was education focused. So in saying that, me going to someone's house was practical because the communication was already there. So that's where the community, um, that's where the break in the community sense is, where like now you have people from all over the world in one spot, right? Because most immigrants are highly focused in inner cities. That's just practical. I mean, most of it do when you consider the evolution of America and now everything was inward and then everyone spread out, right? While keeping certain people within a certain circle. So saying that now you just mix in and it's hard, right? As parents to have that social circle for yourself where you're saying, my kids go there, my kids could go there, opposed to let me know who those people are. I don't know them, you know. Those that's kind of like the break in the family structure that then leads to the kids having to face the repercussions of thinking, oh, I should be able to hang out with that person. I know them, but I don't as a parent. I don't, right? So you could say both sides are right, but nonetheless, I give it to the parents because kids are, we can only do so much and we don't know enough at that age. So let's hear what the older person's response was.
Have a situation where I knew all the boys, the proud of boys, and they were all good guys as far as I was concerned. But yeah, they sort of got steered off into the wrong direction. I don't know who in the group, might have thought, well, hey, let's try this. Some of the other guys are doing it. But basically, good kids can get themselves into an awful lot of trouble. And then we look back and look at the damage.
Especially niggas hanging out. What do you feel about this? If you say you're going over Teresa's house, do you feel it's okay for you to at least leave the phone number for Teresa? And is it okay for your parents, if they want to verify that you really are over Teresa's house? Is that okay?
Yes, I guess.
I guess.
Yeah, it's okay, but I think it's, well, I'm a kid, but I think it's bad for parents to, question you about, well, are you really going over Teresa's house? Well, here, give me your telephone number just so I can find out that you're really going over. Why would I lie?
Yeah, true. So you feel because of your integrity that you should be trusted. Okay. And of course, that's okay as long as every time you say you're going to do something, you did it. Now, you do agree when you do not tell the truth, then trust becomes limited, right? Okay. For example, if at some point I really did call Teresa and you weren't there, you would not expect me to trust you the next time, right? You'd have to earn the trust over again. You okay with that? The trust has to be earned. Okay. Okay. Yes.
I think the older you get, your parents should let you go. Because some people are just like too tied to their kids. And I think at a certain point in your life, you have to let go. It's just like when you go away to college, you're gonna be calling down there every day what you do.
Yeah, so I just wanted to stop that in that situation because, like, when they start talking about the college dynamic, sorry to tell you this, within the first month of you being in college, you're gonna wish you were a kid again because them responsibilities are gonna piss you off. That's just me being practical about it. Them responsibilities are gonna piss you off. Maybe not the first. I take it back. Maybe not. I don't know. I'd say probably the first 2 months. 2 months, give you one more extra month because you got to understand when you're alone by yourself and you're actually looking around and you're seeing how different these people are from the place you come from. Assuming you didn't move in a group where most of the graduates from your school went to the same school, and you're not a lone wolf out there. You're gonna absolutely look around and ask yourself, why the heck am I around these people? So in saying that, I don't think the idea of wanting to grow up so fast is one that needs to be desired in some sense, right? As a kid, even though obviously they're kids, right? In this situation, they're probably they're really older than me by now, so we're not gonna say that. But nonetheless, it's just like the idea of wanting to grow up so fast is one that just kind of makes me cringe the older I've gotten.
Doing who your friends are, who's in your room with you.
What do you think that age should be then?
I think it should be about 16, 17, something around there, because 18, you're considered an adult, so you can do what you want to do.
But you don't think it should be 18?
Well, no.
I think you should start. You shouldn't start calling your friends parent. I mean, you're 17 years old. You're practically grown.
Right.
I don't think you should be calling your friends. I mean, your kids parents and asking them, well, what's so-and-so over there and so-and-so over there? And just like I had a friend who was going somewhere he wasn't supposed to be going. He ended up in a car accident. You know, that's his fault. He should have went where he was supposed to be going. He should have got back. But see, I think it depends on how strong your family, how strong your family is. If they tell you, if they've been teaching you since you've been young to do, and if I say you can't do it and you do it anyway and you mess up, then that's your fault.
And then Timothy?
One situation that happens a lot of times with children, not that, I mean, to comment on her, not that you don't trust the child, it's just that you want to be sure that since this child lives at home with this parent, that it's okay with this parent to have this child come over. So therefore, we call to check. We're not calling to check to say, is so-and-so at the house? We're calling to say, so-and-so had the permission to have come. Then a lot of times you will find that you trust the children. And the children, if they're going to do something that you are not in accord with them doing, they will have so-and-so being their friend answer that phone. And therefore, you will be talking to so-and-so's big sister or somebody and thinking you're talking to the person giving you permission, the child can still get around doing what they're supposed to be doing if they're trying to get around it.
I think the key though is that knowing who the friends are and the communication with the parents is something that should happen when the children are very young, so it becomes a ritual and everybody understands that this is what's going to happen. By the time the child is 16, 17, and 18 years old, hopefully that foundation of expectations on both ends has already been set, and then the trust could then begin to build even more at that point.
True.
And that's exactly what I was talking about initially, in which when I look at my upbringing, the whole community was education minded, right? From the initial beginning, that network, that foundation was already there, which is a lot of times when I sit back and think about it, right? I can't help but be thankful for the way I came up, right? It was definitely not easy. It was tough because when you consider the family structure that my parents created, it wasn't one that was built on them knowing what the future would hold. It was a very rugged start. It was just, let's just put it simply, it was them not being ready to have kids, even though they say they were. And I could give them credit for it because at that point they've already accomplished enough. But nonetheless, the mentality of having a kid wasn't there yet for them. But nonetheless, the family external structure we had was one that everybody was moving in the same direction. And now when I actually ask the questions about like how was our upbringing, I actually went to private school. So like that in and of itself is a blessing that contributed to my success in academics, right? I that's where that luck dynamic comes into play. Yes, I have the ability. Yes, I have the effort. But nonetheless, after having those two, I still had that luck. That luck in which I was able to have a family structure to support academics. And then we could look at the ability as to what the task actually was. So I think that foundation definitely matters. It plays a huge role.
What's that point? A lot of times what good parents also do is they have check back every so often. There's nothing worse than a child going out at Saturday at 1 o'clock in the summertime and you don't see them until 9 or 10 o'clock. I mean, all kind of things can happen. So good parents say, why don't you check back around 3 o'clock? And then check back at 5 o'clock, and then at 7 o'clock, and then at 9 o'clock. We're not saying you still can't get involved in negativity, but you only had 2 hours to do it before you had to check back and, check in again. So that's important because many of our youth simply hang out too much. But beyond the issue of this one, I also want parents to begin to ask their students about what it means to be Black. The session we just went through, we want all the parents to ask their students, what does it mean to be Black and what does it mean to be white? See, a lot of times this could be going on right inside your house and you didn't even know. You didn't know that your children had this negative image of being Black and this very positive image of being white. We want all parents to have a dialogue with their students about what it means to be Black. And we also want you to begin to teach more Black history in your homes. And not just Black history, a new term, Black future, Black present. Many of our youth are tidying about the old greats, way back when. Are there any contemporary Black men and women that are also doing something well? Teach that also in your house as well. But to put you all back.
I think that's very important. That's crazy that he brings that up because I found myself arguing with the fact that the youth are so tired of the old history, the slave movies. And deep down for me, when I hear things like that, I'm like, what the hell? How the hell do you guys think you got here? How do you think you got here? You should be able to appreciate those and see them, like sit back and actually reminisce a little bit and say, thank God for how far you've gotten. But nonetheless, I think it puts it in perspective as far as like if they were dealing with this mental block back in 1988, I could see where they're still dealing with it to this stage where it's like, okay, we're tired of slave movies. Can you guys actually give us identities of people that are actually doing things like Neil deGrasse, the astrophysicist, right? Is it Degrassi or something like that? Like, he's just one of those guys. Like seeing people that are doing things right now within the STEM field, within the medical field, the within law. I know there's a lot of black representation in the law firms, and I think that's very important, right? The biggest base of politics is law. If you can't really argue a point, then what are you doing in politics? So my experience with the court system has been one that has actually opened my eyes to understand like law is very important. Law, business law, or just civil law is very important because it's really done a lot of damage. And so, yeah, I think the idea of focusing so much on the past can be minimized a bit. I still think you should give those people that paved the way for us that credit of that level of appreciation at least.
Back together. I now want to ask the students and the adults, what is a friend? Young people first. What is a friend?
Someone you can rely on and who is trustworthy, who respects you.
Okay, so a friend is someone trustworthy and dependable and you can rely on.
A true friend.
A true friend. Wait. Now we get these code words, true friend. Okay, I just said friend. You mean you can have some other kind of friends?
Yes.
Okay, so let's use your vernacular. We have true friends. What other kind of friends can you have?
You can have acquaintances.
Acquaintances, okay.
Or you can have just social people that you hang around, you know.
So like associates?
Right.
Okay. What's an associate, Quayla?
Person that you just with when you ain't got nobody else to be with.
Okay, so they're not really your friend, but someone you can sort of hang with when there's no one else to hang with. Okay, yeah.
A friend is someone who will accept you for who you are and not for what you do, what you wear, or who you hang with. A friend is someone who accepts you no matter if you're not in the in crowd.
So you can depend on them, they're reliable, and it's unconditional. Let me ask you this. Would a true friend do something negative to you? No. Would a true friend encourage you? Not intentionally. Would a true friend encourage you to do something negative?
Awareness.
Would a true friend gossip about you? I want you to ask yourself, do you really have a friend? Okay. Because some of the people that have steered you some negative directions, they are not your friends. They are not friends. If you have someone who encouraged you to cut class, is that your friend? If you have someone that wanted you to steal something from a store, is that your friend? I believe some of you have had some people that you really did call your friends who really did encourage you to cut class. Don't lie to me on television. You've had some friends that you call friends that encourage you to cut class. And I even believe some of you might encourage them to cut class. I won't say this one, even though I think some of us have also been involved in stealing from time to time too. We have some people that say they're friends that encourage us to do this. And you have to watch that because they are not your friends. Now, I want to ask you, for people that encourage you to do negative, why would you still want to be with them? And if it's harder talking about you, we'll talk about other people. Why do you think some people have people that they call friends who encourage them to do this?
I think a lot of times in those situations, and that's one of those things where we adopt other people's anxieties and stressors. We don't know it, but the more we socialize or move with certain groups of people, we tend to pick up on their mannerisms, their likeness, to the stage where when it's time to actually deviate from yourself, you see that you've been so attached to this person that everything else that you're doing kind of evolved around them. And that's where that symbiotic relationship was created. that's one of the things for me where it's like as I got older, I understand that I don't need to be around so much because my as an empath, I tend to give myself a lot to people. I really want to understand how I can make your life a lot better. In doing that, I tend to hurt myself because I'm absorbing all this energy that's not meant for me. So, in a lot of times, that's where the dynamic, that's where you deviate into those social friend groups where it's like, I want to get away, but nonetheless, I'm stuck. Right. That's essentially how those gang mentalities start, the clique mentalities, just people you've been with and absorb so much of their mannerisms that it's hard to deviate from them. It might not be a threat to say oh, if you leave us, you're gonna know. It's not. It doesn't have to be all of that. It could be as simple as, damn, but I go to this place. So I'm bound to see these people. I'm bound to socialize. We're bound to reminisce. We're bound to, hang out. That's kind of like another dynamic of it. But nonetheless, I'm eager to see what they say.
Part of the in crowd, they want to be able to fit in.
Okay, so typical situation of the in crowd. You have 9 people. You have 5 people that are being negative. You have 3 people being positive. Now it's your vote. Now you have 5 being negative, 3 being positive. You have to decide which way you're going to go. Many of us, of course, choose to fall in right here because they outnumber this one. Simple majority, party in crowd. Another one I think I hear a lot of times is those are my parents' rules. Many young people do not like following their parents' rules. Anybody want to testify on that? Just simply break rules because it's their parents' rules. I just want to be me, and whatever they say, I'm going to do the exact opposite. Have you ever known anyone like that? If my parents say yes, I'm going to say no. If they say 10 o'clock, I'm going to say 11 o'clock. Is that you, Quayle? I'm glad you said I sure didn't want to mention your name, girl. Quayle, testify. What is it sometimes about, I just don't want to do what they say? What makes you feel good about that sometimes?
No, you just don't want to do it because you're sick of hearing it.
You sick of hearing it?
Yeah.
Do you think do you think about whether it's right or wrong? Okay, it's just their rule, right? And you want what, your own?
You just want to do what you want.
Yeah. So for me, that's kind of like one of those things where it comes down to cultural norms and mannerisms that have been adapted over time. Because for me, physical touch is definitely welcomed where I come from. So in saying that, to think you could do anything you want to do whenever you want to do it, it was just not practical, right? It's just not practical. And the idea of, I mean, it doesn't mean you're not gonna step out and be a kid, right? But it's more like the display of thinking, oh, I can get away with it, right? Within it, and what's really telling about that, because it becomes a social norm. If a circle was created around the mentality that shames something like that, then her doing that, even in her deep soul, she will know it's bad. Opposed to someone just blatantly saying, because I want to do what I want to do. Like in saying that, then it becomes one of those things where it's like, so within the social circle you come from that you were bred in, that's not something that is shamed or you feel could be shamed. That's how we kind of gauge who's who as we grow in age. But yeah, let's see how they proceed.
You want to do you want to have your own rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're going to do that.
You're gonna do that. Anybody else like that? Judy, testify, girl.
I feel like when Carmen was saying, you get to a certain age, you feel, I'm a senior this year. Next year, I feel like I'll be in college. And like she said, your parents not gonna be there at all times. So it's like, she'll tell you to be here at a certain time, but you feel as though, well, next year, nobody's going to be there to tell you, come in the house, study, do this, do that. So you feel as though you have to learn on your own, because since no one's going to be there to tell you that, you're going to be like, my mom's not here to tell me, so I can go do it on my own. But if you do it now while you're in high school, you'll learn the hard way. I think it's better for you to learn the hard way than somebody telling you. Okay. And I think it's better to learn while you're in high school than when you get into college and it's too late.
Now, Judy, you don't mind learning the hard way? See, your parents love it. See, what do parents all?
That's a very tough mentality to have in regards to saying that you want to learn it the hard way, because a lot of time there is not I would say this, a lot of times the second chances we always assume are there, sometimes are not. So the opportunities that are created, like let's say throughout the the pandemic situation that we recently had, there was a dynamic in which kids, there was a dynamic in which the loans were held back, no interest, and some people just decided, you know what, I'm gonna just stop paying it. But now, when we look back at how everything is picked back up and how much interest has accumulated, it's almost one of those situations where it's like you're asking, why did you want to learn the hard way, knowing that it was going to start up again? Or in a situation where like some people stopped paying their rents, and it was like they could have done it, but they did other things, like, and then now you're dealing with the consequences of evictions and all this. It's a tough situation, but nonetheless, it's one of those things where it's like, do you really want to learn the hard way? Do you really think that cushion is going to be there for you to land on? Because at the end of the day, you don't want to learn the hard way. That's not fun. That's not fun at all.
Always say to this to that kind of comment. What do they say? I've been through it before.
I know what's going
Now,
on.
do you believe they've been through it back in 1920? Go through what you went through.
They've been through it, but you have responsibilities, and if they want you not to go through what they have gone through, or they want you to go through what they did go through, then they should be able to say, okay, you can learn from your own mistakes, and you should be able to do this, because when you reach a certain age, you should have more responsibilities upon yourself.
So you feel parents are wrong denying you the opportunity to learn the hard way?
I mean, like okay, said, they tell you the first
Heavy,
time.
this is heavy. Y'all don't mind being hurt, right?
Not saying they're really wrong, but saying that you should have, there's only a certain extent to where your parents could say, you can't do this. And if you're going to be 18 next year, which is considered an adult age, and right now when you're 17, getting ready to turn 18, or a senior in high school, they're saying they can't stay out past 12, then, it's kind of, especially on prom or something special.
Why don't they do it on prom now?
I do.
Yes, they would. Judy, I'm just like,
I think though that the youth don't really understand that the parents know the magnitude of the consequences that you might have to suffer. And what parents are trying to do is to protect you from some types of consequences that might be irreversible, like a baby, or like flunking out of school, or drug abuse that might take 3 or 4 years to overcome, if you do overcome that. So it's really just more of a protection, because you don't understand all of the things that might be happening after 12 o'clock midnight.
Now, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And many times the police, they don't care.
Yeah. I think that was a good point she made in regards to not understanding the repercussions of your actions. Because at the end of the day, they're not the ones that are going to be dealing with it. It's going to be the parents that are dealing with the repercussions of, oh, now you have a kid that I have to take care of. I have to go feed. Obviously, you could do your part, but nonetheless, your part is only going to be so small compared to the part that I have to do in taking care of you now, along with the kid. And this is, bear in mind, that it might be a situation where it's a single mother already taking care of a single kid. Now you're bringing a kid, and it's just more stress. So, of course, as a kid, you're just thinking, I'll figure it out later. I got time. But nonetheless, that time, it goes back to the Mamba mentality I was speaking of earlier in regards to, like, Kobe wakes up at 5 a.m. in the morning. Normal practice starts at 10 or 11, starts at 11. Most players are getting up at 5. By that time, he's already done one workout already. Now combining it with practice, look at how much progress he's got, opposed to starting from the baseline. Like, you're not only starting from the bottom, you started from the bottom and making push just to be balanced again. That's tough. That's very tough to put on yourself. I don't support that. I think that's too much work to be doing. But nonetheless, it just matters the social structure in which you were raised in and bred.
Or drug abuse that might take 3 or 4 years to overcome, if you do overcome that. So it's really just more of a protection, because you don't understand all of the things that might be happening after 12 o'clock midnight, and pitfalls that you could fall into that might take the rest of your life to overcome.
But how did they find out? They had to find out the hard way.
Well, hold on. But the Uniform Studies point, there are 329,000 brothers in prison.
It's clear as day these kids, some of them were not raised in a situation where they understand when elders are talking, first of all, be quiet. Not because they're right, but because you understand that it's just a social understanding that if you know you're right as a youth, you just don't have to project it, because your time is going to come in which you're going to be checked the same way. Now, do you want someone checking you the way you want to be checking someone else at this point? Nope. So I think that's just that forward thinking mentality. But nonetheless, you can clearly see in her rebutting this argument is just putting her, in my opinion, it's painting a light that she doesn't come from a social contract, right? How did they find out? What do you mean? Stay in the kids' ways. How did they find out? What do you mean? What do you mean? Okay, now we could tie it back to the idea of how did they find out for them to be telling us it could lead to danger, right? The TV could have showed them. Their parents could have kept them away from it. They could see, like, and another thing about kids is that you have to understand age gives you experience. Age gives you, like right now, if I look at a middle schooler and a high schooler and I'm looking at my life now, I could see how some of the people I went to school with are going that could be replicated in those kids. How some of those kids are going through the same stuff we went through back then. And in saying that, we see how they're going to plan out. If we see a kid that's already doing bad stuff now and we're trying to nurture him to do the right and he keeps fighting it, you can see where he's going to end up. If you see a kid that barely just needed help, and that's where he was a kid that just needs help in regards to academics, and give him that extra help. Now he's successful, and we can see how some of the people that had extra help are actually successful in society. That's gained experience. And one of the things I wanted to point out about this guy is when he was talking about that the situation about having that as Black people we've always been able to accomplish things just given the opportunity. And that's one of those situations where the opportunity comes into play, right? We've had the opportunity and experience are kind of intertwined, because once you have the experience, you could teach other people. But nonetheless, without the opportunity, how could you actually get the chance to actually see it? So I think it's clear that this kid doesn't come from that social understanding. But nonetheless, let's finish this. We got 10 minutes.
Right now.
Again, thank you guys for joining me. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like, so we can have more videos like this. Obviously, this is just for me to live stream and just to get my thoughts out there. But nonetheless, there's going to be parts where I could actually bring people on. And as I grow this channel, grow this conversations, there's no real specific way I'm narrowing these conversations. I just like things that trigger thought. Like this situation, we're looking at the past and how the historical base of America's education system has been split to where we see corporate identity as white, but nonetheless, it's just a corporate identity, because you can see the white and the Asian community doing the same thing, but nonetheless, we don't say Asians act white. No, they act Asian, but in the corporate sense, they have certain mannerisms that resembles what we claim as white, but nonetheless, it's a corporate understanding, because when you're in corporate, you have to be professional, you have to carry yourself a certain way, you have to project certain identity, you have to project certain normality in which makes you fit to be in that ecosystem, or else you're going to be out. So, yeah.
That in many cases was simply hanging out. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And many times the police, they don't care who they get. Somebody robs somebody, they just want to find one person that they can just catch very quickly and put them in jail. Fleming's point about teenage pregnancy. Last year, there were 1.2 million Black and brown girls that were pregnant. And you all keep saying, but it ain't going to happen to me. Right? It's not going to happen to you? Not this early? And the same thing with dropout. I mean, we have a national dropout rate of 23%. In most large cities, it's 50%. That's not going to happen to you either, right? You all got it all under control. Like Theo, I got it under control. Everything is always under control. Okay, Judy?
I mean, we understand the consequences, but it's like,
no, not the full consequences.
We've been living with them for 17 years. You know, I feel as though if they enforce their rules, they enforce what's good and bad. And then, you come to a point where it's up to you to decide. I mean, they know it's wrong. It's wrong, but until you find out for yourself. Not saying that you're going to go out and get pregnant. It's just like certain things that your parents should, have enough trust in you that you wouldn't do that. Because if not, if you're not going to do it with their permission, then, that gives you even more reason to want to go and do it. Because
I think all you all are saying that as you all get older, from 13 to 17, you want to renegotiate the room, and you want more and more rope, right? Okay, you want a regular negotiation, because all you all are saying, when I go to college, I'm totally free. And so you want a gradual movement to that point.
But when you go to college, you're free to a certain extent, but you're always gonna call home and say, "Mom, I need this. Mom, I need that. Can you please help me?" But we're just saying that we need, more responsibilities laid on us so that we can understand what they went through or what they did not go through, and maybe that we can get a better perspective on ourselves.
Okay, and I agree. Right quick before time runs out, when I went to Illinois State, there were 1,000 black students that went there with me. 4 years later, only 254 graduated. At college, in a dormitory, by themselves, no parents. How come only this few graduated and the rest of them didn't? It wasn't ability. The other group, the other 746, stayed in the cafeteria, stayed in the dormitories room, kept shooting the breeze, playing. They lacked discipline. And so some of us say we want responsibility, but really can't handle it. We have to work on that. But let's go on before time runs out. I want to look at the competition of peer esteem, and that's self-esteem. The only way to win against peer esteem is to have self-esteem. In other words, I believe you make silly mistakes when you have nothing to lose. Why not get high? Why not get pregnant? Why not drop out of school? You have nothing to lose. What is it that you value so much you would not want to lose it? Is it a belief in God? Is it unconditional love from your parents? Is it high expectations from teachers? Is it feeling good about your race? Is it knowing where your talents are? Is it knowing you're going to college? That you have a career down the road? I have studied to say that little girls do not get pregnant when they know they're going to college. See, the real issue is you have to be able to tell your friends no. But you can't tell your friends no if you are not strong. And I believe one way to be strong is to improve your self-esteem and also to have goals. You see, when you have goals in your life, when you know you want to be an engineer, you don't cut class. When you know you want to be a doctor, you don't get pregnant at 16 or 17 years of age. I want you to begin to ask yourself two questions. One, why are you here? I don't mean today. Why are you here in life? First one. And the second one, what?
I just wanted to stop there because I'm not stopping, but I wanted to point out something that you said there. Right? When you actually could ask yourself that question of like, why are you here in life? Like, what's your purpose? Like, it'll make you actually really, really take a lot of things into consideration. One of the things for me was when I analyzed like my parents, right? Like, what was the main two factors that brought them together, and that was education. So in saying that, along my path somewhere, education was always there, right? So in saying that, what when you do that internal journey, it might not be you looking. I say look into your parents because most of the path that was set for you is aligned along the path where they took. Now, if you're in a situation where they didn't have a practical path that they were setting for you, you can always trace it back enough to where you can see some of the influences. We've never always been bad people, right? There was a break in a certain structure that created a ripple effect that essentially trickles down multiple generations. But nonetheless, there was that foundation that started off well. So tracing that back or just looking at your mannerisms and trying to understand what do you like, what are your preferences based on your environmental contribution, looking at how everything matters around you. I think that's one of the things when you do that self learning, that deep looking into yourself, that's very important. Another thing that he pointed out that I also want to talk about is all these things that play a role in the self dynamic regarding God. Placing the value on God definitely makes you cautious of the things you do and say. Having a self regard for your parents and regards to what they think about you definitely matters. Will keep then that's where that foundation of a circle starts from. Obviously, them being tied to God, everything here actually builds on each other, right? From the God dynamic to the parents, and then the parents to the teacher, and the teacher to the race dynamic, understanding that, and then understanding your talent, and then college and careers. I think those things definitely show good identity. It places a good identity on people solidifying why what their whys are, right? I initially said my parents created that path for me. In order for me to understand what my purpose is, I had to look into my parents. Obviously, looking through my parents, I could also see God's direction and plans for my life. But and then I didn't really need the teacher aspect of things because I think those foundation enough was good for me. And in the situation, funny enough, when I look at my mom's background, because she does have a very tough background. It was a teacher that brought out the best in her. So she had God, had her parents, and then had our parents weren't really that solid in regards to how they understood the social norms and how everything was going. But nonetheless, a teacher was able to see it and bring it out of her. So our cutoff is at the teacher dynamic. Obviously, there's other ways to trickle things down, but nonetheless, I think that pattern of putting God first, your parents after, and then the third being, what was the third? Let's see, third being the teachers. I think that's very important in regards to understanding this your self worth and where your place is.
What is it that you want so much? You live for it, you'll die for it, you dream about it, you think about it, all your waking moments are on it. If you can't answer those two questions quickly throughout your entire life, you're liable to succumb to peer pressure. Why are you here? And what do you want more than anything else? See, when you really want to be a doctor, you can tell your friends no. Maybe the real issue is our self-esteem is not as strong as we think it is. And secondly, we aren't clear on what our goals are. But beyond the issue of students, beyond the issue of parents, I want to also move now to the teachers. I want to talk about cooperative learning. Here's a typical situation in a classroom. You have 30 students in a classroom, and many teachers grade on the curve. Now, one student scored a 98. The next highest student scored a 79. Everyone else was below them. Now, young people, if you had a situation like this, where there were students in a class, and one person scored a 98, and the next highest grade was 79, of course, they got the A, this one probably got a B, and everybody else got C's and F's. How would you all feel about this student?
Yeah.
Be mad, okay? Well, that's what happens when you have I more important than we. But in cooperative learning, rather than an individual grade, we're gonna have a team grade. We're gonna have the Lakers, we're gonna have the Bengals, we're gonna have the Ashanti, we're gonna have 6 teams of 5 players. And so therefore, the one that scored a 98 and the one that scored a 39 are gonna be on the same team. Now, in this situation, rather than being mad at each other, the one that got the low grade is gonna be encouraging him to get even the better grade. And this one is gonna be encouraging this one to get a better grade. We're now going to study together. We're not gonna reinforce each other. In cooperative learning, if you had a group of 5 students, you would give them 5 different assignments. And they then would have to work with each other to teach each other what was learned. What we found out is sometimes the students can present the idea better to each other than even the teachers can. They can break down.
Yeah, I actually agree with that because there's been situations where I've been able to analyze and explain certain things, or I've been able to get a better understanding from a local student, who opposed to like the professors. Because one thing I know about college or education is it's a business, right? It's a business, meaning people are here to do a job. Whether they do it well or not does not matter. Obviously, in the lower level, K to 12, it does matter when it regards to the government testing, but nonetheless, past that aspect of things, it doesn't matter because your responsibility is for you to be able to keep up no matter what it is. So, in saying that, there is this situation where you actually have to step back and understand that the teacher is not going to be there to help you. And the best people that can help you are the people within your social group. One, they can relate a little bit better to understand where your confusion could be at, right? Compared to where the professor is coming from. Because sometimes it is a cultural norm and a cultural difference, right? But again, I think students tend to explain it better just because of the level of care that they have to have, the level of the limited understanding of the limited. I would say it's the limited understanding of ego in that situation. Because the more you know, the more ego comes into play. But when you're limited in the ego, it's easier to explain certain things because you're on the same level. So that might be it. But I also think some people are just not good at projecting certain ideas.
Marcus Garvey or an algebraic equation, sometimes better than the students can, or better than the teachers can. And so cooperative learning works. And what else I like about this is, in cooperative learning, you no longer have teachers saying, sit down, be quiet, get back to work. Because in this situation, they're working together. And I think this is a better way to deal with peer pressure. We may never be able to reduce the impact of peer pressure, but what we can do is infiltrate the peer group and get them to work with each other to reinforce academic achievement. If we can do that, then maybe we can turn some of this around. Cooperative learning works, and we've got to find ways to look at this. Some other ideas with regards to peer pressure is the community. And before I do that, one other quick point on the classroom, on schools. In your schools, is more glory given to the athlete or to the scholar? More trophies, awards given to the athlete or the scholar? More pep rallies to the scholar or the athlete? We have to work on that. We want more schools giving pep rallies and trophies and medals to the scholars. I can understand the NBA giving more glory to the athlete, but not schools. I also want schools to quit dealing with tracking, where you have the advanced placement, the honor classes, the regular classes. Yep. We want all students working together, because when they work together, they can reinforce each other. See, in a class where one child got 100, another child got 40, there should be no happiness here. The one that got 100 should be helping the other child to receive 40. What Jesus said, what you do to the least of these, you also do unto me. See, the Asians study together. Black folks need to study together. We always study by ourselves. We need to start studying together and reinforce each other. And then lastly, for the community. In the Black community, are there more programs that work with Black youth in sports and in music, or are there more programs helping Black youth in math and in science and in language arts? Which one? Sports and music. So you see, adults, we are giving our youth negative messages. Not only do schools give more glory to sports and music, but so does the community. There are all kinds of programs in Cincinnati, LA, Baltimore, Detroit to reinforce sports and music. But where are the academic programs for math and science and language arts? NAACP has one. It's called AXA. Upper Bound's another very good one. We need more programs that reinforce academic achievement. And you know what's interesting? The rumor is we have a shortage of Black men. There's not a shortage of Black men to be Little League baseball coaches, to be basketball coaches, but where are the Black men in math and in science and in language arts? I don't believe it's our young people's fault. I believe the reason why we have figures like this, remember I gave this figure in terms of the MBA and engineers, I believe it's because the Black community reinforces this. We have a lot more programs in sports and music than we do in math and science. And we have to begin to work on these kinds of issues. Are there any questions or closing comments from the group with regards to how we can monitor peer pressure? We've tried to, first of all, look at its impact, and then look at what students can do, what parents can do, what teachers can do. And we also want more community activists to design programs in math and science and language arts. Any closing comments from the group? Yes.
You made a statement earlier that if you're strong, you could, turn the pressure away if you're positive about yourself. And I believe that it all starts, when you're young at home with the parental relationship. And as you all grow, with your parents and stuff, and you have trust and you do good in school, your parents monitor you or whatever, that it'll grow and you'll be more confident in yourself. And so when that pressure comes, you'll be able to turn it away. Or maybe.
So you recommend parents become involved very early.
Yes.
And you want more programs in the classroom and the community that start working with peer pressure at a very early age. Yeah. Okay. Any other closing comments, but with adults and young people?
I think that we could begin by looking at ourselves, because we individually are part of that peer group that we're talking about. And if we decide among ourselves that we're going to elevate some things, for example, like engineering and math, etc., then we become a peer group, and then we can dictate.
Right. And in closing, remember, to be smart is to be Black. Being Black means Black excellence. Now, remember at the beginning, we had a negative encounter between peer pressure. Now let's look at a positive interaction between a brother and a sister that handle peer pressure very well.
Quayle, we need to take this chemistry test seriously.
Yeah, you're right, Kevin. Why don't you take 3 chapters and I'll take the other 3 and we'll just study together?
Sounds good to me.
I really like that. I like this whole ideology in regards to the future thinking of academics and in regards to getting people engaged and finding ways to create things that could kind of get us going, right? I think the dynamic of bringing up the things that bring in your self-esteem regarding God, your parents, your teachers. Obviously, there's more, but I think those three cores really will justify your success. If you could find a reason to equip yourself to academics, or just thinking in a positive way of trying to be part of the productive dynamic of society, the productive image of what that what we're trying to get away with from the negative stigma. I think from from that alone, I could see how everything has evolved, right? There's definitely more engineers, more obviously there's never enough, right? You always need to work through it. It's I personally know that within my own lifetime, it's not going to be as immediate as we want to make it seem. But nonetheless, being someone that has seen enough of America, the education system, I've seen a lot of progress, right? A lot of progress. It's not like it's obviously when you consider how far we could get, there's still some gray areas there, but nonetheless, I think there's some progress here and there in regards to the previous structure that has been set in place. And I know for me, some of the schools I went to, we had it wasn't too large of a black community of engineers, but within my journey of academics, I was able to see black engineers participating in discussions and getting together and having conversations. So it's there, right? Obviously, it's not enough for us to have a corporate image yet, but nonetheless, I think there's progress being made. And this was made in 1988. We're in 2023. I think there's been progress. It might be small, but nonetheless, it's progress. Because in this is not one of those dynamics that's going to happen immediately. It takes time, education, but the capabilities are there. And, it's all about us individuals doing our parts to see how we could contribute and be part of the society that's trying to move towards that vision of seeing the world from black isn't bad. Black has just been minimized for so long that now it's trying to have an image in this corporate sense, right? And that's where we're at, trying to have that positive image in a corporate sense. But with that being said, I'm thankful for everybody that joined me and anyone who be watching this, because I think this video was very important. I think education, the angle in which we look into education can be kind of fiddled with a little bit to actually complement the lifestyle dynamics that certain people are dealing with, the chaotic dynamic, right? So in saying that, the foundation he set was God, your parents, and then your teachers. So in this situation, I'm putting myself out as a teacher in regards to my other channel. It's oblivious underscore ambition. I do tutoring there for math, science, the STEM program, all in all. And I have a few discussions there, but nonetheless, this is going to be my channel just to do, just brainstorm things. I'm going to look at games. I was actually watching the tennis game yesterday. Did a live on that. I did a basketball live yesterday also. I'm going to go live later today watching the Rockets play the Cavaliers at Summer League. It's been fun, but nonetheless, thank you guys for watching this. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and I'll definitely try to bring more of this out. Thanks again.